Hey parents, Carmine here with your video review of Battlefield 3. While the public tension associated with nuclear warfare has lessened since the Cold War, the threat that it poses to the world has increased. Battlefield 3's campaign places players in the boots of Henry Blackburn, a sergeant in the US Marine Corps, who uncovers a terrorist plot to detonate nuclear bombs in 3 major cities around the globe. Blackburn and a few other men who understand the truth of the plot are the only ones who can prevent their detonation and save millions of innocent civilians. The content in this game differs in the single-player and multiplayer modes. Violence in the multiplayer is extremely mild. While it involves constant combat, the expansive battlefields will encourage the use of vehicles. When ground troops are involved, the combat usually takes place over such large distances that the core of the violence is barely noticeable. Combat is usually over within seconds, and blood is nearly impossible to see. The campaign is a much different story. Unlike the multiplayer, which encourages the constant use of vehicles, the single player is almost entirely ground-based combat between infantry. Hits will result in some blood, but there is never any gore. The violence is constant, but is no more than one would see in every other similar first-person shooter on the market. However, there are a number of times when the violence can get pretty brutal. A few times in the campaign, the player will have to kill specific enemies in a quick-time event. Usually this will involve the player using his knife, but this depends entirely on the environment and the situation. For example, there is one time when the player rips off an enemy's gas mask, instantly poisoning him. There is also one cutscene when the player will have to watch in first person as terrorists record his execution. The execution itself is never seen, but the parallels between this scene and the execution video of Nick Berg were impossible to miss. The actual content visible in this section is mild, since the screen fades out right as the player has his throat cut, but the implications are horrific. Most of the violence in this game is standard for a first-person shooter. However, the inclusion of the QuickTime events and the first-person execution scene led us to give this game a recommended age rating of 16 years old. For the full written review, including the extra categories, log on to SideStoryGames.com.